Excuse me. All right, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live stream. My voice isn't for all ears. Listen as you please. But today, I would like to tonight. What time is it now? It's 4 a.m. A wise man once said, the human being lives in two worlds, not one. And once asked, what are these two worlds? The wise man said, there's the world which begins the moment you're born and the moment you pass away. And there is a world that was here before you, and there is a world that will be here after you. And in some sense, there's the world of the before and after, and then there's the present moment. And in some sense, the human mind is engaging responsibility through a domain of time, as if time is a tool stretched out to, in some sense, handle the greatest endeavor. We are using time. We are creating time. You know, when I see quantum physicists thinking about space and time, theoretical physicists thinking about space and time, for me, space and time, they have objective value, but they are empty words. And in some sense, what I'm saying is that it's as if quantum physicists, when they think about space and time, they are just like the caveman trying to rub two sticks together to make like fire or something. So for me, it's very fascinating. When I look at the past, human beings haven't evolved one bit. When I look into the future, we are an evolution beyond the human idea. So this is very important and crucial to comprehend, that in our mind, the history of the world, its time can move forwards and backwards, and it's more malleable, as if we're this sophisticated, biologically inspired creature that at some point began recording the image of the world and creating a version of it in what I call the subtler planes of imagination and memory. And what I mean by that is that in some sense we have a version of the world constantly in our heads, but that version of the world is based on a certain idea of ourselves in that version of that world. So what I mean is that in some sense, enlightenment is waking up from the dream that most of your life you have been thinking about yourself as a thought. And you're not a thought, you're a direct moment of being where time and space visit you in some sense in your waking state. So for me, it's very fascinating. Reality doesn't really have too much of a language-based like, how can I say it? It's like knowledge is only like 20% of all knowledge is verbal. The rest is not verbal, you know, and that's just a random number I'm posting. But in some sense, I find it, my experience, it's to that range. As if, for me, observable reality is, it's nice, it's beautiful, and it's magnificent, and it's blessed. But the subjective reality has a texture where at some point this thought you think you are wonders it's a thought and realizes there is always a watcher within. So in some sense, our internal dimension is eternal, it's infinite, but our external dimension is temporary. And we are creatures that are looking, how can I say it? It's as if the dance of neurons in the brain is somebody's life story. Do you see what I mean? We're living in a world of such sophistication. Now, what I mean by this is that we have to find an approach towards life. Generally, every person has to do this for themselves. They have to find an approach that is trying to acknowledge all the dimensions of reality. You see, it's as if like there's let's say we begin as a thought. Okay, let's say I think I hear, I see, I have my senses give me access. It's as if we're in a dark room and we are holding a flashlight, but that flashlight is our sensory perception. And what that means is that there is so much in the unknown that once Socrates was asked, this very profound ancient Greek philosopher, once he was asked, why? Why do you seek knowledge and what is the truth of it? Something of this sort. His answer was the only true knowledge. And knowledge and wisdom become synonymous once your real self is found in some sense, you know? And so Socrates says the only true knowledge is to know that you know nothing. Because the moment we sculpt out a language and new worldview, we see the world is vaster and new children are born with new ideas. And so we are not realizing the climate of thought, that thoughts come and go. And there's in history, you know how many lost technologies there have been, how many libraries burnt by conquerors. And you know, right now we have the internet and our database problems seem to have been fixed, but we have other issues. We have issues in regards to this collective realization as a species. You know, like, I hope the UN's listening. Probably not, though. Do they ever listen? No, I'm joking. Like, I honestly feel as a collective global community of creatures that are intelligent enough to, in some sense, level with one another, understand one another, and find common ground, it's as if every human being is on an existential journey. Okay? We're journeying through existence. We're trying to make it to the next day. Now, if we want to think about an abundant life, which so many people in the self-help industry, they all want to become millionaires. They're like, please, guru, teach me how to be enlightened so I can be a millionaire already. So many people think like this. They're trying to find internal solutions for objective problems which they're avoiding, you know? The guru's task is very easy, actually. It's not too hectic and spiritual like some Indian traditions. See, the guru is someone who's become aware of something that their younger self wasn't. And in witnessing that intelligence, they have a sense of what is artificial and what is not to the best of their ability. You know, so pretty much the guru's like the person saying, like somebody coming and asking you where's, like, you know, I don't know, where's Tim Hortons? In Canada we have Tim Hortons, and you know, Starbucks is everywhere, I believe. But so what I'm saying is, imagine somebody says Tim Hortons, and Tim Hortons is like, let's say like I'm on the street, somebody asks this, and Tim Hortons is on the right, and 100% it's on the right, no doubt, right? And this person keeps asking, and he's like, where's Tim Hortons? And I'm like, it's to the right. And they're like, what do you mean right? What is right and wrong? You know? And so what happens is that the person is resisting to confront the directness of the truth, because unfortunately many religions, perhaps in their strategy, and not an arrogant strategy, but an enlightening strategy, religions want limit people. They create a guilt dynamic, a guilt complex. This guilt complex is important because it doesn't just come from religion, but religion amplifies it. It comes from human beings witnessing normal behavior, and when after that normality things change too much, they try to come back to that norm. It's pretty much like the bird that can't fly yet, but the mother's pushing it out of the nest, but the bird's trying to still hold on to as much of the nest its feet can, you know, before it falls and has to use its wings and enter a new dimension of intelligence. So life in some sense is how universal intelligence is allowing itself to learn from what it means to live as an individual within a collective reality, you know? So the biggest issue in any sort of rationality becomes the issue of where is the boundary of separation and where's the boundary of unity. You know, in all these mystical traditions, they have, in some sense, a relationship. They have a relationship in regards to an underlying presence within any sense of consciousness ever existent. As if any person who's been alive, they have contributed to more realms than one, but at the same time, in their subjective domain, they have confronted an existential emptiness. Because what are we? Like, I thought about this and I'm like, so, okay, so society thinks that we are thoughts in bodies that are just here for a little while and then we don't know what happens and that's it. And I was like, we think we are thoughts that are having thoughts in bodies, and I was like, this is ridiculousness, you know. And what I mean by that is that it's not that science or anything in regards to the realms of technological advancement has been wrong. It's just that the issue is from the language which morality is based on, because the world is divided into language, you know. That's just like what is philosophy? It's just different subjective angles of reality, you know, of this one world which is both mysterious and at the same time very obvious. You know, we it's like right now I'm speaking to you through the waking state. I am like awake, my body's active, and you know, I'm communicating, I'm creating sound, you know, in certain patterns of meaning, you know. And that's what speech is. But this is the crucial point, that in order to create a world out of nothing, not only something has to be there prior, but there has to be an attention that maintains its creation. That means a question I asked and nobody answered, I'm like, how did the first human beings figure things out enough before they died? Like, it's as if I felt like it was very unique how just our species continued. And then I realized that it's this complex evolutionary kind of memory. And, you know, there's only, I've heard a few people speak about this. Most notably is, what was his name? A man named Rupert Sheldrake. He speaks about morphic fields, and very playfully, the way at least I've interpreted so far is that these morphic fields are as if, like, if the planet was an intelligent being, these are the thoughts it's constantly having, these are the memories. But it's not just the planet. Our conceptual ability gives us the potential to create a God that has no partner in the physical world. So what that means is it is keeping the unknown open, at the same time advising humility, but at the same time trying to keep the heart of man open. Because it is very cruel if ideas kill people, you know, because an idea is unnecessary to influence objective reality harshly. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying people are living in a world where they haven't considered its deep continuity. So they're not living for, they're trying to live in their current generation, not realizing in order to prepare for the future generations, our behavior have to adjust to the mistakes of the past. So if everybody just does what they want, that's in some sense anarchy. You know, let's say it's called polite anarchy, you know. But if everybody does what they want, but at the same time create a dimension of contribution, of seriousness, where in any society around the world, the most serious individuals who look at the world and realize something can be real are given the opportunity to go forth, right? And honestly, like, I remember seeing, like, there's this very interesting show called Attack on Titan. You know, and what I'm saying right now is going to be ridiculed probably, but I'm going to criticize, but I'm going to tell you, like, I'm saying all these playfully. In some sense, I'm not grounding them into like an immediate relevant thing. I'm just bringing up the concept because the design of some concepts have value, and that's why they're very important. Freedom of speech is very profound because implicitly it is the freedom of the mind of a being to communicate in society, you know. And so what I'm saying is that there's moments in human life where your relationship with just intelligence as it is manifest is not individualized. For example, when you go to deep sleep, you can say, oh my God, man, this man's attained the ultimate union. There's a gap in the memory. And that's because for a long time I was relating and associating to my memories, which was a fixed, subtle structure, which I had just kept, right? So memory is, it's like I don't consider myself as an individual thought that has to remember other moments and constantly, how can I tell you? It's like living in your mind as a particle or as a wave. And living as a wave means that you are conscious of the ocean of intelligence you're in some sense waving in. The ocean of universal intelligence, which is only accessible to you once you, in some sense, become um, not just peaceful, but just you just look at the world and you realize the whole solar system seems empty and we're the only beings here. And people say there's population issues and all this, and I think that's ridiculous. It's like we're not just physical beings, we have minds. Every person born has a potential to be the next great genius of the civilization. And it's so important that we don't allow um, social behavior to define the behavior required for full confrontation. I have often said there's a war of language going on. There's this subtler war, this subjective war going on, and so many people, like, some people don't even consider a war. They just say, like, I get thoughts whenever it comes. But I don't believe it's all like that. I believe like you're a field of conscious memories, which is being kept based on the energy of your biological body. So your biological body is allowing your, how would I say this? Your other dimensional body to, in some sense, unify as the mind of the soul in the machine. So what that means is it's a beautiful era in history. It is right now. I am very proud of this moment. It's a beautiful era in history because for a long time man has wondered about the spirit in the machine. This was a philosophical inquiry of great proportion, like of great magnitude, where people were wondering, is there a soul or is there not a soul? The spirit in the machine. Now we are reaching the point where we are realizing that the machine is in the spirit. The machine is in consciousness as the world is. So matter, it's as if light is entering our eyes, entering, like as it is suggested, phenomena occurring in the brain leading to our perception of reality. But we never know what there is out there before light enters our eyes. Do you see? So this is the limitation of observable reality. That means we require two methods of advancement for civilization. One that is suitable for the day and one that is suitable for the night, and one that is in some sense the yin-yang consideration of the whole situation, where forces of chaos and order are kept within one moment, and they in some sense just become a natural dance once you don't think you have a mind. You just realize you're a moment of being prior to any value giving to a thought structure. It's some people are architects that go to school. Some people, or in some sense, everybody is an architect of their belief system because they accept it or they receive it. And even if they've been forced to believe, you can be intelligent enough to look in the mirror. So this is what I'm saying. We have to slow down the extremeness of civilization to create a gentle enough environment, global environment, for a renaissance of like I call it a multidimensional renaissance in other talks. But what I mean by this is that once the species is gentle enough, then the greatness will how can I say it? Genius requires freedom. You know, genius is, if you were Buddhist, a high karmic birth. It's a good karmic birth because it is one that is taking responsibility for the mind of mankind. So society in Mr. Within's view is in some sense divided between not different classes, lower class, higher class, or all this. When I see a society or even the civilization, or especially for a species, you got to consider the structure of their design. Like, because guys, let's say very playfully, let's think science fictionally for a moment, if that's even a word. Society is structured based on the different aspects of the creature, the living creature. And what that means is there are some people who are being the body of society. They're literally creatures or moments of attention that have come to just experience physicalness. And then there are some people who are, in some sense, not just people, just a dimension of contribution to society, because we haven't discovered the multidimensional society. What that means is we suddenly realize the influence of other dimensions on us, because the dimensions are not like the colors in the rainbow divided. They're divided as if they're all in one room. It's as if like onion style. The multidimensionality is onion style in this universe to some degree. You know, what I mean by onion style is that one dimension is encompassed in a greater dimension, so the greater dimension can communicate to it. Do you see? So like that dog as a pet in the household of, like, let's say a modern Western family, that's it's as if that dog is in your greater world of intelligence, right? But the dog doesn't understand everything as you do. Do you see? But you can communicate to the dog and say things to the dog that it won't understand, and the dog will look at you and take it to its own capacity. So in some sense, it's like um, uh, heliocentric. Is that what they call it? Maybe not heliocentric, geocentric. Pretty much, it's just like onion style. I'm using very sophisticated words of, very advanced, university level caliber, you know, onion style. So my whole notion is that I'm this person in this world that realizes every person is temporary, and they all know it. All beings know that death is just like a part of life. It is literally like the next stage of it, right? After you're, let's say, lived a long physical life, then you will eventually get bored out of the repetitions of the cycles of what you see, and then you will in some sense seek a non-individual truth, a truth that it's as if like true for you, for others, and for everyone, because it has to do with the truth of the world we're all are in. So in some sense, you gain an ability, like your identity becomes mythical. What that means is you suddenly realize you can visualize yourself throwing the same lightning bolt as Zeus in your mind. Physically, Zeus is not even here, but in our mind we can visualize. And so there is an ability to receive knowledge of the world by considering it in our subjective realm. And this is what I don't like, about current society, because in my book, I speak about the subjective realm and the objective realm, right? The subjective self, the objective self, the subjective dimension, the objective dimension of existence. Do you know? And I speak about consciousness as being two eyes that see the same, a sense of self that is present in the emptiness to acknowledge it, and a sense of self that is present in the fullness of life. That means there is a visible self and there's an invisible self. The invisible self is not based on the visible, is the opposite of the visible self. Do you understand? That means you gotta have a sense of good to have a sense of bad. You realize that you have been functioning in a vehicle of good and bad judgment your whole life. You've been thinking things are good and things are bad. But there are some people on this planet that they suddenly realize that it's all just design. It's all design, magnificent design moving. And for me, an aspect of myself searched for truth, not through words, but through the design of what is displayed. For me, it's like, okay, let's say we're all one intelligent being, like just like how this, imagine the cells in your body, like suddenly we're like us humans, how we're in the universe. And so suddenly the universe is this one whole entity, let's say, as some ancient tradition suggests. And then I was thinking, in some sense, like, how would I say this to you? Like, it's as if I wanted to see God move things, and I realized God, like divinity, our existence is the proof of our divinity. How things are here just by being here is the uniqueness of it. That means I don't remember, like, how can I say it, how would I say this, there was a time where I couldn't remember prior to this lifetime, and then I had experiences which seemed to be the imagination of this lifetime trying to visualize my past self. And then there came moments where I realized a sense of self that did not exist in time. And the best word I have for it is presence, because it is present within every moment. And that is when you begin living as a universal being on this planet, and you're no longer selfish. There's no time. Like, forget the religious dogmatic thing. As an intelligent being who's here to witness your civilization advance, you require to take it seriously and not get burdened by mediocrity, which is the trap that many human beings have, in some sense, walked in and at the same time come out of. And at the same time, it was necessary for the illusion to exist for truth to be found, for truth to be found. That means if everybody was enlightened, the concept of enlightenment would cease to exist. So what if everybody is already enlightened? So when I had these kind of playful thoughts in regards to mystical traditions, but I began to realize that I am dealing with a living intelligence, and a living intelligence, like, so what, I see theories about it, it has to be experiential. So this is the thing where your philosophies must, through an authentic humility, become a search that is not external bound. And an internal search is very playful, because there are clouds of emptiness which you must fly through as a pilot of consciousness, which I speak about. Oops, I forgot to change the name of this talk. Just a second, guys. Guys, I'm still live. I'm just fixing the title. I totally forgot. Let's create a title right now. Beyond the visions of a past self. There we go. There's this very nice story I want to share with you. What is this story? This story is the story of three men who are friends, and they're walking, and one of them sees a ladder that's going above a huge wall. So one of them goes up the wall, and he sees that it's the Garden of Paradise. Just follow the story, okay? The person goes up the wall. One of the friends goes up the wall and sees it's the Garden of Paradise and sees like heaven and truth. And the guy just jumps in. He doesn't even look at his other friends to say anything. He just jumps in straight away. Then there is the second friend, and the second friend's like, where'd the first friend go? He goes in and he goes on the wall and he suddenly sees the first friend is in the Garden of Paradise, and it's like, wow, you know? And so the second friend just feels a bit like, I can't leave the third friend. He looks at the third friend and says, hey man, the Garden of Paradise is here. I'm going. And he jumps. Then the third friend is just left there alone. And he walks up the ladder, goes on that wall, and looks at the Garden of Paradise. He looks at heaven. And then he looks at it and he says to himself, oh my God, the Garden of Paradise is here. The whole world must know it. And he climbs down the ladder and goes to tell the world. And, you can imagine what happens there. So that's the moral of the story, that we need people in society that are trying to create an efficient environment. Trying to create an efficient environment where different how would I say it? By the way, when I give these talks, I usually have headphones on, so I'm listening to a song. Sometimes when the song ends and it's not on replay, like, things get deep. Okay. So what I mean by this is he said, like, all this stuff about love, compassion, and all this, it's not just like for people to just hold hands on the beach and say kumbaya. It's a mentality that is saying we will inevitably have to realize our codependency as living beings. And so we are beginning the civilization is at a point where where some guy's talking a lot about it. Civilization is at a point where it's starting from an individual sort of kind of relationship for the creature, as if everyone's trying to be that unique individual. Everybody's trying to be themselves in some sense. But ancient traditions were like, you got to study the self. And when you study the self, you have to, in some sense, forget the self. Because once you look into it, you see more. So you forget the self. And once you forget the self, you awaken to the nature of all things, meaning that you realize that if there is truth, if you even consider the validity of that idea, that means there must be a true self to witness it. There must be, it's like, the end of the rabbit hole for Alice is like it leads somewhere. Do you see? It's not all our dreams. So that's the how can I tell you? It's like it's not that everybody is a sheep. Like it's not like everybody's just brainwashed in the wrong path. It's just that people are not taking their moment um, as a universal thing. They're thinking in the frameworks of just their um, I don't want to say narrow vision. I want to say everybody's just starting on their own part of the mountain, but we got to put some effort to find that greater common ground, which will create enough stability for the next great inventions of the world to present themselves. I'm finding that the children of the future generations, they want a more gentler world externally, but internally they want to have like lots of fun and excitement. So as if chaos was first outside, people are doing wars and stuff, and it's being internalized. Where we might be living in a peaceful society, where just the violence is in our virtual reality. So if two politicians want to fight instead of a war between countries, they go put on virtual reality headsets and they have that war in their mind. And they decided based on that, because at the end of the day, it's the decision of people. That's what war is. It's just people are saying, all right, let's do it. And so that's the issue. The issue is with not realizing the opportunity cost of such an endeavor. Because if you just want a mountain of money to climb, then you just want to just play with objects still. It's as if you are still in the child mentality, but you're an 80-year-old banker. So you got to realize, okay, you're a temporary being here for a little while. So help all these journeyers who are also temporary travelers in this dimension. And it's not that other dimensions are like sci-fi and stuff. It's just that you got to be honest as a moment of being, and just all that intuition and synchronicity, it just flows. It's as if like so many people get caught in the interpretations of what life has to mean, rather than realizing it is kind of like it's you can't attribute a changing universe, you know so there was a long time I was thinking even the concept of God was change. What is it that has no partner? What is it that's like beyond everything? And then I'm like, everything changes, so I thought it's like God was the spirit of change. And then at some point I began to see like I got tired of how my own mind interprets things, and I became playful. And when I became playful, my intelligence moved to a different dimension where life wasn't a battleground. It had become, in some sense, a peaceful walk in like a nice park or a forest. And so when I experienced life internally in that intensity, I realized there never is a reason for me to get angry, right? Aside from situationals, that means like, and like I get like anger comes, like let's say I work somewhere, and there was a confrontation there with people, and I noticed some like negative intentions just moving towards me, let's say like that, right? So there was like something to confront. And so I just stood there and I confronted it, and I got a little bit emotionally upset. But after that moment, like after a minute, it wasn't there. It's as if I like intuitively I don't carry thoughts that are unnecessary for my survival. I don't carry them. So many people are carrying baggage. Like when they were young, somebody told them they can't do something, and their whole life they're like, I can do it. I can do it. I'll show them. And their whole life goes on getting missed. That's the worst kind of bullying, distracting someone from their real life. And you know why it's terrible bullying? Because that person will try to find external help for their internal problem, but they will realize an internal problem has only an internal solution. You just have to change your viewpoint, and you've changed the universe where you were struggling in. I'm going to tell you another very interesting story. It's a Zen story, um, and I could very I can animate it in my mind in a very um, real way. Like pretty much, this is the story. There's some guy who hears there's an enlightened person, like a holy man, especially in Buddhist, cultures. There's something of this sort. A person who has witnessed, has received a glimpse of truth, and they are now a new being. That's pretty much what the Buddha was. In some sense, he was a new being because he had a new understanding that true intelligence doesn't only move through the words of men; it also moves within the soul of the moment. And the word soul is poetry because it cannot be a word. The soul cannot be a concept. So it's just a playful word. Anybody who's ever told you they're spiritual, they're in some sense they're saying that I am the edge of my mind is endlessly unknown, which means that I am neither certain I'm eternal, neither certain I'm temporary, but I'm neither uncertain I'm temporary, and neither uncertain I'm eternal. It's this playful state where you just are slowly stepping down or stepping outside of these language Iron Man kind of suits you've built for yourself to live in. And it means a detachment from memory. So I got very astonished because I had a conversation with a very, how can I say it, a very wise friend of mine in India. And this kid was, how can I say it? He was actually exactly my age. He was actually my yoga instructor, like for the whole class when I was in India, Rishikesh, for like a couple months, and sometimes I call him and I have conversations with him about like truth and wisdom and all this. Right. So there was a point where I asked him about the importance, like what his opinion was on the importance of truth and people trying to find some sort of natural environment to remember themselves in. And his answer was very nice. He said, truth is not nature. Don't think that truth is just going and like, sitting by a tree your whole life. It's like, that's not truth. And I agree with him. I intuitively, like I've even spoken, that that's not only it, but nature is important for social recovery, for the recovery of society's technological blindness, blind escapades. So for me, that's why nature is important. But in some sense, and his name is Vimal, and Vimal was telling me that it's you suddenly realize it is not your thoughts, it is not your emotions, and by not being your thoughts and emotions instantaneously, it is not your memories, and if there's no memory, there's no time. Do you see what I mean? So in instantly, it was something where it's like how like the Ribu Gita in these ancient texts, they would say neti neti, which sorry, not in the Ribu Gita, in the Upanishads. I think it's in the Ribu Gita too. But anyways, they would say neti neti, which means not this, not this. Right. And so that story I wanted to tell you kind of follows this idea, because the story is that this kid hears about this enlightened holy man, right? One of these like realized beings, and so he goes and he sees it's just this dude, like this, like, older gentleman just sitting on like on his porch, and he's silent and quiet. And this young man who's seeking enlightenment, he goes to this person who everybody's telling him he's enlightened and stuff, and he goes to the man, and he says, "Kind sir, I've come here so you tell me the truth of reality." You know, and so the guy's just quiet. The old man, let's say old man. The old man doesn't say anything. He's just sitting there. This young guy just doesn't say anything, for a little while, and then he asks the question, and then he repeats himself. Then he feels the old man is ignoring him, you know, and he doesn't say anything. You know, and then he comes back the next day. He asks again. The old man doesn't say anything, and he goes and talks to some people and says, "What's wrong with this guy?" And they're like, they're just telling him like, "You got to go to him. He'll open up to you," or something like that. You know, and so uh, how the story goes is that this guy goes there every day because he knows that this man knows something. You know, this older man is enlightened. So he goes there and he begins sitting there with him by his porch and close to like as this like how when I heard this it was like close to a year where this guy would just go there and every now and then keep trying to ask questions. Then after, let's say, I think a year's too long, like after some point, you know, this guy was like, after it was a relatively long time though, you know, because the guy was there, you know, sitting at the porch. Imagine waiting for this guy to like spill the beans, you know. So this was the thing, right? And eventually one day the younger guy asked this older man, and he's like, "Why don't you say anything? I'm going crazy. You know, just tell me the truth. Maybe you don't know anything." And he just walks off. He just does some rude, disrespectful, you know, aggression. Just his aggression was rude because there was a person older than him, you know. And so just by and then the guy walks off. He walks off and he's walking, and as he's walking, like suddenly he gets a feeling, you know. And imagine he's been there a long time with this guy, and this guy hasn't said anything, and he gets this feeling like as he's walking away from that guru's place, you know, that enlightened guru's place, he's just like, I gotta go back. He goes back defeated, you know, because he knows that man knows something. And he goes there, and for the first time, the old man speaks to him, right? And so the young kid goes there, and the old man looks at him and says, "Why this ceaseless coming and going?" And so it's said that that kid attains enlightenment in that moment. And it's for a second the old man says that and smiles, and the kid realizes, oh my God, he has created an outlook on his life that he has to rush through to find validity, to find success. He has, that person has sped off the speed of life in their mind, has made them forget their true nature. And you will find your true nature once you're true to nature, to the nature of existence, to your moment. You let it be as it is prior to anything. You know, you are being a moment of being prior to anything anyone can say. You are your own moment. That is divine. You are self awareness in an empty room called the cosmos. So far, it seems empty. You know, I mean, it's not empty. It's filled with billions of galaxies and stars and all that, billions, trillions. You know, countless. But I'm telling you, it in some sense we are in empty space. We're just like a bunch of matter in empty space, and that's how we think as humans. But when we think multidimensionally, you're going to realize that intelligence like like we're multidimensional. That means our mind is preserved through a different dimension of intelligence than our body. This is why when people, like, the concept of reincarnation is there, like the concept of remembering past lives was spoken about in ancient mystical texts. And the reason it was spoken about is because it's as if like your physical body decomposes, but the memories you've accumulated is being carried by your consciousness, as if like you're extracting the utility out of this lifetime as a mind and walking to the next endeavor. But the issue is that, you know, there is a karmic destiny, and then there is an enlightened destiny. And the enlightened destiny notices the game of reality and karma and wonders to a point where you stop searching for what you know is not true for you. And you look at what is real for you and what you have accepted, and you observe it, and you study yourself by studying how you have become the person who you are now to have values, and then realizing the present moment allows you to update any moment. Any moment you can change your mind, which means that in some sense, your mind is changing all the time naturally, you know? And it's very phenomenal. This kind of suggests that there's something more than just the brain in some sense, you know, or at least the capacity of the brain to create a line of awareness throughout all the birthdays you've blown candles and your physical body and thoughts have changed. And that means in all those years you've had a sense of like, it's me, but I'm 20, like 6 now, or like, you know, or whatever age, you know, you're becoming, or you are, you know. And so in some sense, the world works through our eyes, but our eyes work through consciousness. Consciousness works through an unspeakable present moment, which literally behind consciousness is pure awareness. And the only words I can tell you is kind of like sight in emptiness. It's like kind of like somebody like asked me like, if you had a meditation, what would you be? I'd say I'd call it empty seeing. That means you're seeing that consciousness is attributeless, but what's in consciousness has many attributes. That means the seer within realizes what is seen cannot be it, and cannot define it fully. So science either has to realize like it's very hard to get an index of an infinite universe to find the truth of everything, you know, but we can work with what we've got, and we can in some sense allow the imagination of the mind of mankind, of the civilization of humankind, to advance. The word advancement is one of my favorite words. Because the idea behind it is one that holds within it the natural beauty of the next stage of how existence happens in this universal sector. Beyond the visions of a past self, the present moment roars eternally. We're either experiencing countless moments, we're experiencing either infinite moments, you know, separate moments, or we're experiencing one collective present moment. And it's very simple because it's prior to duality, so complexity and simplicity, that concept's not even relevant at that point. You have become the experience of existence, realizing it is existing as it is experienced. I hope this talk has served you to be their true self in a world of lies. So that's the end of the this is the end of the talk, but I hope you enjoyed it. Much blessings. Namaste.